kill it love. So love when I wanna get another one, I go take and do it in I love. Waiting you love, oh. No be waiting I love, oh. Waiting I love, I go know how we done my heart, oh. Go no be vodka. This time on the ginger. But I know the ways that we start.
You let it yum 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 yum. Na yela pere matina yela pese. You let it yum 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 yum. Na yela pere muna kapela chora kakisa. We are yela pere balungna baire. Tupa ani imping tuna asanta tapage bayu tugtele asankele yura baba tugiyara we hari hela pere bongna baire tupa ani asikul jatuma ikina kine kille sikul jakine titatia undile sikul jatia satasua zadle sikul gasua korakua kole sikul gakua sarasua sole sikul gasua tinayela pere chora kakisa we hari hela pere bongna baire tupa ani sikul gatuma tupa ani sikul gatuma.
That dream of studying and working abroad has been made much accessible to everyone, including you. So worry less about how you're going to get there, because we always make it happen. This is Staff Finders Ghana Limited. We offer a highly professional guidance and support system, both in your university and visa application process. Staff Finders Ghana Limited is a highly trusted agency of the University of the West of Scotland, one of the largest modern universities offering a range of academic, social, and sporting facilities. You can apply for undergraduate, master's and PhD in business and creative industries, education, social sciences, computing, engineering, physical sciences, health, and life sciences. Come through Staff Finders, and for your studies, you get yourself a laptop or a £500 gift voucher. Call on +233 598 4888 04. WhatsApp on +44 7404 711 049. Send us an email or visit our website for more information.
Hello, welcome to Political Justice. It's yet another Saturday afternoon, and we are here to do justice to most of the topical issues that have come up in the political space in Ghana. With me here this afternoon to discuss the issues are Dr. Nee Okine, an assistant professor of actuarial science at Appalachian State University. My dear friend, Oreku Ampofo, who is a policy analyst based in Canada. Gentlemen, you're welcome.
Thank you.
All right. Well, without wasting time, let's introduce the topics to our viewers. Today, we're going to talk about the selection of Dr. Matthew Opoku Prempeh as the running mate to Dr. Baumia. Anyway, let's welcome Dr. Zita Seshi, who is a sociologist also based in Canada. Today, my panel is biased towards Canada. So Zita, you're welcome.
Thank you. I was like, why was that escaped? But hey, it's all good. Women are getting skipped across the board. So, gender discrimination, but it's fine.
Well, I didn't know you had joined us yet. But anyway, there was no gender bias in that. All right, so we just mentioned that one of our issues of discussion today is going to be the selection of Dr. Matthew Opoku Prempeh as the running mate to Dr. Baumia. And then our next topic is going to be about the Supreme Court in Ghana. Apparently, there's a letter going around that is said to have been written by the Chief Justice recommending certain individuals to be appointed to the Supreme Court of Ghana. We are going to discuss the appropriateness of such a letter and also the size of Ghana's Supreme Court in general. And then, if we have time, we'll move into a conversation about the Basic Education Certificate Exam, the BECE, and also there's conversation about a bill being sent into Parliament to eliminate it, and that students will move from the elementary level, all the way to a 6-year period of secondary education, which would include the basic secondary school that students previously had to go through, write an exam, and then proceed to secondary school. So we will talk about that. But before actually going into these topics, last week we talked about the demonstration that took place in Kenya, and apparently there are some results. So I'm going to play a video here of certain concessions that have been made by the Kenyan government following the demonstration. And then we'll just take a minute each to talk about how is it that they were able to get the results that they got, and situate that in the context of Ghana as to whether there is hope for us in adapting similar strategies and perhaps yielding similar results. So I will play a video here that talks about the concessions that have been made in Kenya quickly, and then we'll move into our main topics.
At the same time, senators are now asking President William Ruto to reduce the number of cabinet secretaries to 14, scrap the office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary, and deal with wanton corruption in order to restore public confidence. Now, in a heated bipartisan session, members collectively described the country's leadership, them included, who were completely out of touch with their electorates. And as Emmanuel Toe now reports, the senators unanimously rejected the salary increment that had been proposed by the Salaries and Remunerations Commission. Take a listen.
All of us, let us rise and observe a minute.
It was a session of reflections and introspection as the senators took stock of what had transpired in the country following weeks of deadly protests.
Order number 4. Petitions.
One by one, the senators who broke party affiliations took to the floor, each giving their account of how and when the rain started beating the current government, with the majority leader Aaron Cheriot proposing a draining of the swamp.
Where this thing has reached, Mr. Speaker, it needs an overhaul. I am afraid that not the usual glue and gum that we put into areas that are leaking will solve this time. It's completely broken.
If it was working, some of the ministers in office today would not be ministers. They became ministers because a corrupt parliament allowed them to become ministers, and then the DPP followed it up by withdrawing their cases.
His colleagues in the government benches joining in the fray as they led an offensive against their own government, training their guns on the Inspector General of Police.
That the Inspector General of Police must be called out for failing to provide leadership, Mr. Speaker, for failing to morally and legally even update the country on security situations, Mr. Speaker.
During the deliberations, Parliament's wastage, planned and misuse of public resources was laid bare.
There is 377,000 Kenyan shillings on my ETC. Members of Parliament, the staff of Parliament have to be honest with Kenyans. In the way the budgets of Parliament are prepared, there are ways and means of reducing the expenditure in this House in a manner that will reduce the burden on taxpayers. I honestly do not need all that money. Even if I ran up and down the expressway for a year, I would never exhaust 370,000 Kenyan shillings.
The senators coming up with their own demands to President William Ruto, including scrapping the office of the Prime Cabinet Secretary.
Dissolve cabinet, reconstituted. Mr. President, disband offices outside the Constitution, including CAS, including Prime Cabinet Secretary.
Reduce the size of your cabinet from 21 to 14, the minimum. Merge departments. Reduce the number of principal secretaries.
Okay. All right. Okay. So as you can see, it's bipartisan. Members of parliament have found a united voice in condemning certain things that are going on in the government. Oreku, I think I'm going to give you a baptism of fire here. It's your first time joining us, but I'll let you have your first take on this.
Thank you so much for the invitation, and thanks for your kind introduction. I've been actually thinking about the Kenyan issue a little bit recently, especially with the announcement that was made and the concession that was made. But if you look at what has transpired in Kenya, to me, is an issue of a dysfunctional state that we run and the kind of politics that we've adopted in our part of the world and the continent we are coming from. Because if you look at Kenya, Kenya is one of the fastest growing economy in Africa. It is really doing well on the macro level indicators. However, with the changes in the global issues and hardship around the world, they haven't found a way of cushioning their own people. And on top of it, the coping strategy and the coping mechanisms that the ordinary Kenyan was using in order to overcome some of this hardship was being taxed as a further punishment to the hardship that in most cases was due to both domestic and international factors. So for me, the functional state and how to manage the functional state is what we lack in most African countries. And if you look at the response of the government initially, the way the government itself was belligerent, the rhetoric, and the way the government met the demonstrators in itself was something that is unbecoming of a democracy. It's something that is not to be encouraged. Of course, the demonstrators went overboard a little bit. They went overboard, not even a little bit. They went overboard with their demonstrations and banning and causing a whole lot of mayhem. But the way the government responded initially wasn't good. So the functional development of our country is what is really important. By functional development, I mean, how are we going to spread the economic development in such a way that normal people can benefit? How are we going to ensure that the day-to-day institutions are respected? How are we going to make sure that water is running every day? How are we going to make sure that our roads are safe every day? Those are the functional nitty-gritties of state development that most of our countries in Africa are lacking. Of course, we satisfy the conventional definition of a state. We have a well-defined border. We have a government. We have all those things. So those are the conventional definition of a state.
Okay.
But
how about the almost selfless resolve that we had these members of parliament, take on this matter? I mean, is it genuine? Is it sustainable? Because, I mean, some are even voluntarily asking that certain benefits being given them should be cut. Are they just acting in the spur of the moment, or it's really coming from a sincere place? And is this something that we in Ghana could possibly achieve?
I wasn't really looking at even that in the sense of whether it's coming from a sincere heart or not. And to me, that is really immaterial. What I'm looking at, of course, they are politicians. They have to respond to the moment. They have to repose confidence in the people. They have to calm the people down. So for me, it's an enlightened self-interest, and that is okay. I'm not really interested in the sincerity. It's a strategy. Every politician should be able to do that. When your people are angry to that level, you have to come out and show them you are doing something so that it will bring some confidence. But my issue is that after you've cut your expenditure, what next? They can cut the expenditure and within 2 years, they will increase it when things are calm. They can cut the expenditure and still use the state as an apparatus of plunder and corruption and still get the money from something else. So the functional state, to me, is very important to me. How are we going to make sure that our governance system is functional, things are moving well, transparency to the core? So for example, in Ghana, it's hard to know the salary of MPs. They will give you a raw figure, but it's not something you can quickly check and know the exact figure. Those are the things we need to encourage, so that when I know your name, I Google your name is there, and I'll be able to know this how much you're receiving. These are all your benefits. Those are the functional details of a state and how you manage a state. So to me, that is more important to me than the sincerity of
Okay.
the politician.
Okay. So, I mean, I guess those are some of the benefits of the checks and balances in the state system, right? Whereby, you know, one conduct would lead to pushback, and then perhaps, you know, actors will have to realign to suit the conditions. But anyway, let me share some of the concessions quickly, and then we would. So I'm trying to share my screen here. Okay. I don't know if this is clear, but in fact, the Kenyan government actually came up with certain concessions. For instance, 47 state corporations with overlapping and duplicate functions to be dissolved. Number of advisors in government to be reduced by 50%. Budgets for the offices of First Lady and the spouses of Deputy President to be scrapped. Confidential budget for President's office to be scrapped. Budget for renovation of government facilities to be cut by 50%. Purchase of new vehicles by the government is suspended for 12 months, except for security agency. Suspension for 12 months. I don't know if that does anything. All non-essential travel by state and public officers is suspended. So, I mean, Zita, what do you think? What's your take on this? Are these just actions to calm people down, or do you think these are sustainable actions to address the concerns that the Kenyan youth raised in their demonstration?
Oh, thank you so much for the opportunity. I just wanted to say, Nee, happy belated birthday. I hope you had a blast with your getaway. For me, again, this is just another issue of band-aid strategy. You know, when there's a wound, you want to put a band-aid on it and not fully address the wound. I believe that systems need to change across Africa. Systems of governance and how politicians operate needs to change, and we need to have systems that are accountable. However, I do disagree with Oreku on the fact that he doesn't care about sincerity. I believe that this whole issue with Kenya provides the opportunity for politicians to really interrogate themselves and question their motives for getting into power, because without a doubt, we all understand that it is all about personal gains and enriching the political class. It is not about the ordinary persons. So in as much as systems are important to ensure that the checks and balances work out, for in this case, I would say it's again, band-aid strategy cuts across Africa. Anytime there's agitation, they quickly wrap a band-aid on the wound to appease, because in as much as I commend Kenya, I feel like Africans as a whole, we do not have the ability to sustain a momentum when it comes to holding our leaders accountable. So I know Kenyans, it's been 1 week, they are still out there, and I hope they continue the sustained momentum to apply the pressure that is needed. And the lesson is that across Africa, the younger ones can have the conviction to have that sustained momentum and press the necks of our leaders. But I believe that the political space need to be injected with some level of sincerity and integrity, because it's about legacy, and it leaves, you know, even when you die, it kind of follow you, or it shapes who you are as a politician. So I believe in sincerity. Definitely, it's not coming from a place of sincerity with all these budget cuts. I was surprised to see that the office of the first lady and the second lady, they had all these grandiose expenditure. Like, what do they do as first ladies? I know they have things they do, but do we really get to see and monitor what they do and the impact of the work of, the first lady and the second lady. These are some of the issues. So again, band-aid strategy, long term it is not sustainable. We need structural changes, the structural changes that allow, and again, structural changes, and again, mental conviction that allows the ordinary African to have the momentum to press on for what they need, and also a redefinition of why are people really getting into politics, and if they are doing it for the right reasons.
Okay. All right, Nee, let's have your take quickly, and then we can move on to our main discussion today.
Yeah, for me, I'm so excited. I'll take any win I get from these politicians. Um, Now, what Kenya have shown is that this is not rocket science. When you show up, you get counted, you put pressure, things could change. And this is why I'm so excited about this Kenya issue. Now, there are two sides of the balance sheet, right, or the budget or whatever. You have the expenditure side, the revenue side. It's not always about increasing the revenue, but sometimes you need to lower the expenditure. And based on their demonstration, because of their demonstration, they've gotten their government to reduce their expenditure instead of increasing their revenue, which will come from taxes, which means citizens will bear, you know, uh, the losses. So I'm so excited about this, and I hope all the youth of from across Africa, we are looking at it, studying what the Kenyans are doing, because trust me, what they are doing is something we need to learn and replicate. Sometimes I go on a space on Twitter from the Kenyans, and they're like 130,000 people on the space, and I'm like, wow, So what they are doing, I need more studies into it so that we can see how we can replicate it across border, because we need our leaders are taking us for a ride. I mean, especially Ghanaian politicians, they don't listen, and everything's a mess, and we need to figure out how to get them to listen. Yep.
Okay. All right. So I guess, the consensus here is that we need sustainable systems that will check our politicians. In my opinion, they can make these concessions, and as Ulriku said, in a year's time, they'll find other ways of, rewarding themselves with more juicy, state resources, right? But we need solid systems that will check that will check politicians in a very sustainable way, rather than this very reactionary approach to addressing concerns that are raised by citizens. Yes, but so let's proceed to our.
Can I have a word?
Yes, yes.
So I care about sincerity, Zita.
Yes.
I'm not. I think there was the way I cannot ask. Maybe I didn't express myself well. So I cannot ask me whether the politicians are sincere. That's why I said I don't care about their sincerity, but I care about sincerity across board in terms of as a human being. But when you're managing a country, you don't really want to bag on the sincerity of an individual. You want to make sure that the system is intact in order to force whoever is there to be sincere or not to be sincere. So yeah, basically I care about sincerity. That's all.
Yeah. Anyway, Madison said, if men were angels, no government would be necessary, right? So we operate a government under the assumption that we are not dealing with angels. Whatever will put them in check is what is important. Okay, so after several months of speculation as to who would be the MPP's running mate, it was announced on Thursday that Dr. Maitu Opoku Prempeh is going to partner Dr. Baumia. Let me play a video by the president announcing the selection after he had just come out of the meeting of the MPP, I think, Council of Elders, or whatever executive body that is in charge of making such decisions. And then we'll come back and talk about his nomination, his person, and whether it's a very good choice for the MPP.
The National Council has just endorsed the nomination of Matthew Opoku Prempeh to be the running mate to Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. The MPP has an excellent ticket and we're going to win with this ticket in 2024, 7th of December. That's the news. That's the news.
How's the feeling?
Feeling is good. The feeling is good. Well, they make a very good pair, and they're going to win.
All right. So is the feeling good, as the president just intimated in that video? Is Matthew Opoku Prempeh the excellent choice for the MPP? There are certain issues, outstanding issues regarding his character that we will talk about. But what are your initial impressions? And I'll go to Reku first, I hope it's okay to call you a sympathizer of the MPP.
So I really haven't given Napo's candidature a serious actually. I haven't really given it a serious thought. But I think from all indicators, everything pointed to Napo, because ever since Bawumia was nominated, Napo was really on top of all the running mates hopefuls in the sense that I think MPP realizing that they need to rekindle their base. And Napo, I don't know whether Napo will be able to bring out the base, because the base is currently frustrated, and people are really feeling the hardship of our society, and that to me is what the MPP has to work on. In the political history of Ghana, at least since 1992, it is always difficult. Although when MPP is winning, they're able to win with big margins, and if NDC is losing, they lose big. But it's always difficult for you to rely only on your base to win elections, because our elections are so competitive. So if Napo is even able to rekindle the base, it's mostly going to be the Kumasi base. But Ashanti region is bigger than Kumasi. So how is the MPP going to do in such a way that they'll be able to pull some votes from Greater Accra? So great, because Greater Accra is the epicenter of our election. If you lose Greater Accra and you don't get the margins you want from Ashanti region as an MPP, you're more likely going to lose the election. And things are not in the favor of the MPP. So that is pure the political calculations and political strategy. Because this question really that you've asked me is more of the politics, not necessarily whether it's good for our democracy or it's good for our governance system. Because first of all, he qualifies. He meets all the qualifications. He meets all the basic qualifications, and he qualifies to partner with Bawumia. He has been an MP politically, track record. I think he meets it. So he meets everything. But for me, as a strategist, I would have wished that the running mate would have come from somewhere else, not necessarily Asante. Okay. The Asante vote will reduce, and it has always reduced every 8 years for every government in the MPP, so it will reduce. But what are they doing to get votes from other parts of the country? Okay. For me,
so you raise an interesting point about Greater Accra, and I guess the tendency for us in Ghana usually to analyze election results largely by region, which in my opinion doesn't really make a lot of sense, right? It can aggregate the election results in a very uniform way to look very pretty, but in terms of real analysis, the regional basis of analyzing election results in Ghana is almost meaningless. And talking about Greater Accra, there are certain places in Greater Accra that you can almost view as the Ashanti region vote. Say that if the MPP is able to get the vote out in those places, it would be as relevant to their winning chances as the energization of the votes in Ashanti. Mm-hmm. And so that's a very interesting point that you make. But in terms of, and do you think that his reach across the Ashanti region is not going to be that much? He doesn't have the capability to reach beyond, if you like, Kumasi to other parts of the Ashanti region where the MPP actually needs to pull out, or for them to turn out, for them to have a chance of winning.
I think there's a tendency, and somebody who grew up in Ashanti region, there's a tendency for Kumasi people are normally to think that Ashanti region is Kumasi. And that tendency is there. So normally when people are talking about Kumasi, they're thinking of it being Ashanti region. But if you take the towns around Kumasi, they are huge and big and has more population overwhelmingly than Kumasi. I think Napo's strength is from Kumasi. He's a in and out of Kumasi. He's a great guy there. A lot of people like him around that area, and he has connection to the stool, which also can energize a lot of people. But apart from that, I don't know. I don't really think that he will have enough gravitas to bring the Ashanti region vote. And Ashanti region vote, we're talking about Mampong, Bekwai, Konongo. We're talking about all those big towns surrounding Kumasi. Those votes are the votes that make Ashanti region huge for the MPP. But as in the same way we're talking, voter region is going to show up big for the NDC, and it's not going to go down. It's going to be massive for them. MPP is hoping that Baumia's factor will be able to pull out of the Mampusi votes, will be able to pull out of a lot of the Dagomba votes because of the Muslim Islam factor. In that case, then we're going to have a very tight election. So those are the analysis one can make based on the ethnic cleavages within our country, based on the regional how do you call it, issues we have in our country. But for me, I don't know. I haven't really given Napo a serious thought. We can critique him and look at his impact on our democracy, whether going for a candidate because of his populist appeal is important for our democracy or not. But I'm not a strategist on the ground, so maybe they know exactly what they are doing. So we will stay and watch and see how things will go.
Okay. So Zita, it appears, the public perception is that Napo comes with a lot of baggage. There's a tag of arrogance that is widespread and shouldn't be underestimated. And it took them a while for them to name him as running mate. And his name has been sort of at the forefront of potentials. Given that it took them a while, is your suspicion that they were trying to find an alternative to him and it turned out that they didn't get, and so they almost had to just, do with him, essentially? And I guess the analysis was that they needed somebody from Ashanti because of the disillusionment of the base, and so they wanted somebody who comes from the area to energize the base. And looking around, there appeared not to be any other alternative better than him. Is that the impression that you get?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, unlike Oreku, I'm not a sympathizer of the MPP, and so I'm able to offer a more objective analysis. I mean, preparing for today's discussion, I heard MPP members saying that, in Ghana, when you're bold, you're assertive, you speak your mind, you're called arrogant. So arrogant have taken on a positive attribute. And I hope, as somebody who's always under intense criticisms on Ghana social media, I hope it trickles to me, whereby, my confidence and my demeanor is seen as not arrogance, but I'm being, arrogance in a positive light. I know my stuff. I'm a critical thinker, because that is the attributes that the MPP quarters are attributing to Napo. That, he's a critical thinker. He's assertive. He speaks his mind. It doesn't make him arrogant. These are admirable qualities. And again, I believe, it's the whole not.
Okay, Zita, since you brought that up, I actually caught that part of the show. That it was on Newsfile, and I took a clip of it. And let me play the definition of arrogance by Kofi Bentel, who was a panelist on the Newsfile show earlier today.
Okay.
And then
he made the right choice to achieve his goal. I think he hit it spot on. Everybody can talk. Have you ever come across a choice like this, which people didn't have anything to say about? So everybody can talk. And the irony is that the people who he's campaigning against are the ones trying to advise him. As in, they are saying, oh, this man is not good for you. You should have picked the other person. In other words, if you pick this man, then you are going to lose. So pick the other person so you can win against us. Clearly doesn't, wash. So let those fundamentals be clear. Then you have what is being said everywhere. Napo is arrogant. You know something? I think that's not so much a negative. If you have a person like Napo who has been in the limelight, in the politics of Bantama and MPP, been at the forefront for decades, been in some of the most controversial ministries, education, recently energy, and when he is elevated to the highest political position he's ever occupied, all people have to say about him is that he's arrogant. Maybe you will see the positive I'm talking about.
They
why?
say more, but the arrogance tag resonates.
The point.
Which I suppose you agree with me.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Hold on. Look, in Ghana, arrogance is a term of art. It does not mean what it means in the dictionary. In Ghana, arrogant also means too known. You heard that before?
Yep.
Those of us who work in think tanks, who do analysis, who talk on radio, we hear that every day. In Ghana, arrogant means you are articulate. You know how to string your thoughts. You know how to make an argument. That's what arrogant means. In Ghana, arrogant means you're assertive. It means you know what you want and you push for it and you insist on it. In Ghana, they'll call you arrogant, they'll call you too low. In Ghana, arrogant means you are analytical. Instead of saying, well, it is this, everybody says it is this, then you are saying, why should it be this? Why can't you consider this and this other option? Immediately you go into analysis, you are too known, you are arrogant. In Ghana, arrogant could even mean you are well organized. Your things are properly put, you are organized, you move steadfastly, you calculate. You are too known. You are arrogant. So in Ghana, arrogance means so many things. Then there's another thing about Ghana. And I'm Ghanaian, I haven't lived anywhere else. In Ghana, we excuse ignorance. Okay? What I mean is, we don't celebrate excellence as much as we excuse ignorance. Look, a lot of our comedy, okay, is built on exhibiting cluelessness. People mistaking things and then we laugh. We are very jocular, okay, about those things. And sometimes it tells you why we are where we are, why we have open drains, and why certain things that should not be are. We tolerate them.
Elsewhere, the people you call the comedians are perhaps the most intelligent.
Elsewhere, they are the sharpest, the smartest people are the people in comedy.
Yeah.
Over here, and look, I don't mean the comedians here are not smart. They're actually very smart too. But over here, you realize that even the smart comedians have to dumb down, okay, to exhibiting ignorance. And you know what I'm saying? I'm being careful not to sound insulting, but I'm making a point that if somebody calls you arrogant in Ghana, don't get too offended. Just check yourself. Just check yourself. So what we need to appreciate is that for a man like Napo, the question should be not what you have against him, but who is your alternative?
All right. So, I mean, Zita, what are they talking about here? This meaning of arrogance that has been attributed by Kofi Bentel here, does it align with what you were trying to say?
I mean, at least now we all know that arrogance comes with a good attribute. For those of us on the streets of social media who consistently get beaten every week for having an opinion, it would work for our PR. But again, for me, I feel like Napo is the best decision or the best bet that the MPP have. They do not have anybody that can, to a large extent, have the impact that the perceived impact that they believe he has. His decision is just the whole politics of ethnicity, South and North alliance, and perhaps Muslim Christian, because we all know that religion does play a role in our politics. So Muslim Christian dynamic, that is the game they are playing. This election is going to be critical. It's going to be elections of ideas, elections of proven record. What do you have to do? And the MPP is crumbling really bad. We've all seen Napo's arrogant disposition and demeanor when he was being asked about the energy crisis and power outages. And so like I said, 6 months to election, this is not a time for you to name your running mate. That should have been done earlier in the year so we can all get over his arrogance and focus on who Napo is. What has he done in the past, and is he able to really augment the efforts of Baumia and deliver victory for the MPP? But right now, you are naming it 6 months. Everybody's talking about his arrogance and his disposition. People are focusing on his character, not his proven record and the other things that he brings to this dynamic. So for me, like, I mean, Oreku is a sympathizer or even maybe a secret MPP member. So he's able to offer insight in terms of, what is going on. He believes that he's not a really strong candidate. And that has been some of the dissent in the MPP camp that, some group of people, I heard a man say that Napo cannot come to his constituency and raise his hand during campaigning or something like that. And so there's dissent among the MPP. So I believe this is good news for the NDC and how they move. And the NDC are partly celebrating for this choice. So let's see how things go. This week, we are all talking about Napo, but the whole thing has been focused on his character. As the weeks go on, I hope we can delve deeper into his performance in the education ministry, in the energy sector. There was a video I saw on social media, again, arrogant. He was talking about free SHS and he said students are complaining about not having a place to defecate. They should be thankful they have plastic bags to defecate in. And it was, and he looked really young. So that was like 10 years ago or something in the clip. So these clips are going to come up and we're going to be analyzing. I am hoping we can delve deeper in his track record in terms of performance and what he's able to bring on board. I feel the MPP is a sinking ship. Napo doesn't add much to the ticket in terms of what he's able to bring. They're playing the game of ethnicity and a religion, but I believe that the descendant Ghanaian is getting above that type of politics.
Okay. All right. So Ni, I mean, I don't want us to dwell so much on whether, Napo is arrogant or not, but irrespective of that, it's a tag that is widespread. In fact, the person who even defended him in that video said he was going to address, in quote, what is being said everywhere. So whether it's true or not, it's a perception that is out there. How much of it is a baggage to the MPP going into this election? And is it even relevant? Should that be a consideration in, for instance, a political party selecting a leader? In fact, I think asking the question whether it's important for a leader to, being arrogant is important or has any material importance as a leader or not, I don't even think that's a relevant question to ask. But the question to ask is if that perception of the individual is going to be a baggage to the ticket, right?
Yeah, I'm happy MPP decided to go with Napo because he's going to contribute to Baumia losing massively. And you guys know I don't like Baumia, so I'm happy actually they made a decision for him. This is not a Baumia decision. This is why the decision took so long, because this was a party decision. They needed somebody, as Oroku said, to kind of energize the base. It looks like Napo is.
And can you just address us for a second why you don't like Baumia, so that?
Oh my God! How many minutes do you have? This guy, as I said, right? You look at and I told you I gave him he was the reason why I gave NPP the opportunity, or I thought the NPP could do something when in the 2016 election. This guy was paraded as the economic whiz kid, and as I said, every organ in the body has a function. Baumia's function in that NPP government was the economics, was the governance, and that was the reason why Akufo-Addo presented him when he didn't even qualify to be a vice presidential candidate, and that's why the party people agreed, because that was the selling point. He's the economics guy. He's going to help me govern. But today, what we see is that this guy decided not to talk about the economy anymore. And I can tell you all the metrics you want. We all know that dollar is depreciation. This guy said if your fundamentals is weak, exchange rate will expose you. Now inflation is everywhere. Our debt status, we don't even pay our debt anymore. And now we are our rating is junk status. DDEP, a lot of haircuts,
Okay.
pensioners are not getting their stuff. So yeah, that is why I don't like Bawumia. He's not functioning. It's like the eye is not doing what it's supposed to do, right? And the eye cannot do anything else in the body. And that is what Bawumia is failing to address the problem he was brought to address. And that's why now he can't even talk about economics anymore. He's just talking about Mr.
Okay.
Digital.
Okay. I just wanted you to, just explain yourself briefly because,
Yes, yes,
yeah,
but to Napo, and to the earlier video, I mean that's a bunch of bollocks. Like, do you really think Ghanaians don't understand English? Arrogance is arrogance. We know what arrogance is. Somebody who is offensive and thinks he's superior, and that is Napo. This guy, when journalists went to talk to him about the energy crisis, he said, "Bring your own timetable." Who does that? We need timetable to plan our lives in this doomsday era. When we were experiencing doomsday under Mahama, that was the right thing to do to make sure people can plan their lives, and that's what led to the death of that young child when the hospital didn't have electricity. They had to wait for whoever to come and fix the generators. So yes, this guy's arrogance, even you could say, led to the death of kids. So if you have a leader who is arrogant, it's not good because you need your leaders to listen. And that's what we saw in Kenya. You need leaders to reflect and see that the path we are on is not good. So let's change course. But if you have an arrogant leader, you think he's going to listen to you. So aside the arrogance, when they started implementing the free SHS, this guy was a minister of education then. They know the problems with the increase in enrollment because of the free SHS. And what did they do? The best solution they could come up with is that let's do double track and triple track. That's what they did. That is this guy's track record. If you want us to talk about track record, that is this guy's track record. They brought the double track system where kids will go and sit at home. And sometimes because they don't have anything to do, the boys will be engaged in
okay. Yeah.
activity. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So, we would come to the specifics in another episode where perhaps we would juxtapose the two vice presidential candidates, and then we would evaluate their records, especially given the fact that they have both served in the Ministry of Education. So, but let's stick to the perception issue here. And again, I mean, and you made a very important point about somebody who is arrogant doesn't listen, because I heard from the conversation that went on in Newsfile that they sought to attach a certain material benefit to, or an immaterial benefit to being arrogant. To say that being arrogant doesn't mean anything in the material sense, right? And that if the person is productive and they are even arrogant, what do you lose? You get what I mean? So, Oreko, I will come to you in a minute, but the question I'm going to pose here is going back to, and then if you have other issues that you want to talk about, you can bring them along, but specific to NAPO and the MPP, and then going back to history as far back as the 1970s with Victor Owusu, who, for instance, incurred the displeasure of people of the Volta region by certain comments that he made in Parliament, describing them as inward-looking people and people who would normally employ only people from their ethnicity if they were occupying high office. And leading up to the 1979 election, he had to actually go to the Volta region and plead with the chiefs and sacrifice the cows. You know, he killed cows to appease them, but that was to no avail. Now, Napo has been charged with similar issues with respect to his relation to the Volta region. He is alleged to have, and in fact, I saw the video of him saying that if they were going to allocate money in the budget for the Keita Sea defense, he was going to organize a demonstration in Kumasi, and people are saying that those were more or less tribalistic sentiments, and he's likely to, you know, sort of distract from the gains that the MPP has made in the Volta region. What is your take on this parallel that we are drawing here? And if you had it seemed like you wanted to say something, and if you have something to add to that, Reku.
I don't know what the last comment you talk about, Napo. I don't know that. So, but I want to talk a little bit about the arrogance issue. You know, the arrogance is so perceptible that for me, I don't dwell on that. And because the way Zita you address now, somebody will say you are arrogant, and you yourself said that you have actually had a lot of comments. So the way arrogance we use is so perceptible. I don't really want to dwell on that, because we've also selected leaders that we think they are humble and didn't really take us anywhere as a country. We've selected leaders that we think they are humble, just still didn't listen to us.
No, but to push back on that, for instance, now one of the biggest peeve against Akufo-Addo is the fact that he doesn't listen. But Akufo-Addo was also somebody who was widely perceived as arrogant.
Mm-hmm.
Is there no some vindication here to say that if somebody is described as arrogant, they are so conceited that they don't listen to other people? And that is exactly what we are seeing in Akufo-Addo.
I didn't want to cite example, but Mahama was branded as humble, but in a lot of policy areas, he didn't listen to us too. So that's what I'm saying. Mahama is an example. A lot of people say he is humble. I don't know him, and I will go with the default judgment. But on a lot of policy points, he really didn't listen, and that's why he lost 1 million votes. The vote was basically.
We really want to go down that path.
No. I'm just giving an example. So because you didn't make me finish. What I'm trying to say is that I think we shouldn't focus too much on individual perceived traits that we only see on camera.
Okay.
We only see on camera for 1 or 2 response. As human beings as we are, we will one day have a bad day on television, because they are back and forth every day. They are not angels, actually. Unless you take them in so high esteem, that's why you get disappointed with politicians. I never get disappointed with politicians, especially Ghanaian politicians across the board. The MPP, the NDC, basically all have similar track record. There's nothing bad about the MPP that you will not find the same bad about the NDC. And there's nothing good about the NDC that you will not going to find about the MPP. So if we really want to move our country forward and want to really have a conversation, for me, the either-or comparison ought to stop. The 2 political parties have shown from 1992 that they are similar. They're more similar than they are different in a lot of respect, in terms of competence, in terms of agility, in terms of the way they're able to solve problems, in terms of arrogance, and in terms of humility. Just so similar across board. So any objective, in quote, objective analyst should be able to look at these political parties and say they're similar. The solution of Ghana, if you really want to be clear and objective, is not the fact that NDC has failed, Bawumia has failed, MPP has failed, Bawumia has failed, and NDC is going to do well. No way. It's going to get worse and worse and worse with these 2 political parties. And let's be frank. And that is so.
I mean, I don't want us to go into more of a general conversation about this. Let's try to stick to the political issue at hand. But we will allocate a day for having a broader conversation about Ghana and its future.
But what I don't like also is that Brandon wants somebody we see on television as arrogant for 1 or 2. He might not listen to maybe a policy direction. He might not listen to a policy, and that is the nature of politics, though. If somebody don't listen to a policy suggestion as a politician,
Okay.
that is not enough to call.
Okay, just give me a minute. Let me play this video, and then I'll come back with a question.
Calls for a timetable.
Ask those who want it to bring it.
They should bring the timetable.
If there is, I haven't seen any timetable. So when
but people are calling for it.
Say bring a timetable. What do you mean? The ECG says that there's no timetable coming. Why do you want to bring a timetable? What purpose? Why would somebody get up and wish evil or bad for the country?
Okay. Now, this commentary by him has largely been described as insensitive. And for me, as a leader, it's empathy, not a virtue. The ability to speak in a unifying way is it not a virtue? Because I feel like people almost want to assign concrete material benefit to certain qualities and then ignore the qualities that are fluid, but may be very important in national cohesion, or even, giving some satisfaction to, the citizenry. So this is concerning Dumso. And Ni mentioned that within the same period, at the Kolegu Teaching Hospital, children that were in incubators actually died as a result of the lack of schedule for Dumso. Now, we all grew up and understand Dumso as the lights going off and on. It doesn't matter what the cause is. And then people are asking him to come out with a schedule, and these are his comments. Does this not matter as a leader?
You want me to respond?
Yeah, I want you to, yes.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I agree when you say that he was not sensitive. I agree. I agree that I think at that point he could have handled himself well. At that point, he could have maybe sweet talk or try to use his political acumen. But is this clip enough to brand somebody as arrogant? Insensitivity is not a synonym to arrogance. So that's what I'm saying. That can we say the same thing of other leaders? And generally, that's how politicians behave, and that's how they talk. So we have a whole political subculture in our country. Basically, about 98% of our politicians behave that way once they get into office. That's a kind of the political subculture we have in our country. And our society is so hierarchical, structure at all levels, that we behave that way. But what I'm trying to say is that it is not fair to pass a verdict on an individual based on some of these things, because then all our politicians are arrogant in one way or the other, except one or two or three people that you can say, oh, this person has never shown anger in public, so he is the most humblest of all men. But for me, insensitivity, yes, he could have phrased his words well, he could have chosen his words carefully, but at that moment, he's a human being. And then I don't want to be seen as speaking for Napo, because it's unfortunate that I cannot throw me out as a sympathizer of the MPP. But I don't want to be seen as speaking for Napo. But what I'm trying to say is that we dwell so much as a country on some of these things which are not necessary. Really not necessary. It's not necessary whether the person does that for me. It's not important. What is most important is what Napo can do, what he cannot do. If MPP has not done well, we boot them out. But for me, I don't also see NDC as a solution to any of the economic situation and the mess that we are going through. Okay. I don't see John Mahama. We voted against John Mahama big time, and I don't see him anyway. Baumia has failed, then John Mahama too failed. Then we should get all of them out and look for somebody else. But for you to think that Baumia has failed and John Mahama is the solution is equally, for me,
I mean, okay, I don't know. I mean, Zita or Nia, are you interested in responding to
that's? I mean, it's the first time I'm meeting Roku, so I'm going to say it as respectful as possible. But trying to say NDC and MPP is a bunch of bollocks, right? The truth is, the MPP has performed 4 times. And if you want the metric, I can give every metric. So if you tell me a government who have been giving more in terms of revenue, has borrowed more, and has performed 4 times worse, and you're trying to say they are the same. I don't know where you're picking your math from, and I'm sorry, that is not true. MPP and NDC is better. The last 8 years of NDC is far 4 times better than the last 8 years of MPP. So when it comes to who do we want to do to lead us next, I'm going to pick NDC 4 times more than MPP because that's what the metrics is saying. I'm sorry, you cannot say these two parties are the same in this moment of time. And if you want us to go through all the metrics, we can go through that.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, I think Oriko is being ambitious here, but I guess the issue here is we have two alternatives, and I mean, in every political situation, you always have to pick among the available choices, right? And if the claim is that both parties are the same, my honest opinion is that democracy is a process
in a lot of aspects.
Yeah, I mean, I get the similarity that you are, but I think democracy is a process. It's one step at a time, and in my opinion, maintaining MPP would be like rewarding bad behavior. And for me, I think the turnover has to happen for the ruling government to go and regroup, rethink their decisions while in power, and that if they are eventually given the opportunity again, they will come back with better decisions. And perhaps that's what we are likely to get from an NDC government, that self-reflection has taken place since being in opposition, and that when they come, the expectation is going to be a little bit more compared to what they had done before. So, I mean, yeah, I get the point about the similarities, but I just think that it's progressive and it knels to the benefit of democracy for the change to happen. Yeah. Okay. I mean, just quickly, 1 minute, and then I'll.
No, I'm not against change, and I like the way you put it. I'm not against change, and the reason why our democracy has endured is that we have two clientelist political parties that actually rotate power, and they will never blow up the system, and that's my theory. But I don't know the metrics that Ni is talking about, but what I want to say is that if you want to present an objective analysis, a failure of one political administration doesn't make the one who failed earlier on's record better. That's not how you do comparative analysis in any way. So of course, if you put two worse, one will be worse than the other. It still doesn't mean that person still has a right to or has any locus in occupying our governance arrangement. So I don't disagree if you say NDC MPP has performed, or NDC under John Mahama performed better than Akufo-Addo. I'm not going to debate you on that, but it doesn't in any way also justify or give the NDC the license to come and manage our country, because they failed, and historically they failed more than the MPP. I don't even know what Ni is going through, but 1992 the NDC has managed this country more than any government in our history. So I don't even know what you're talking about. But the issue is that for me, any objective analyst will look for a third person, a third force. It really is not about the party you like. If I'm not going to vote for MPP, I will vote for maybe somebody else. If Cheddar comes in and fail me, it's okay. It's okay for my conscience, because at least I have never tried him, and I don't like the two political parties, and I voted for somebody else and the person failed. But John Mahama failed me. If I vote for him and he come and fail, intellectually, what am I going to tell myself?
No,
Bawumia has failed. What am I going to tell myself?
Agala, this is what the MPP tell themselves to make them be able to sleep at night, and I'm not going to have it today. If the two main reasons why they said we should vote against Mama was Dumso and dollar rate. If you remember the Kwame Sepaka's famous video trending, two D's, dollar and Dumso. Mahama added more electricity generation than any government, any president in his 8 years. He actually solved the issue of power generation in our country because of all the investment he did. Today, they've taken some of the things he electricity he paid for the car power to Kumasi. Today they've been able to take it to Kumasi. This guy solved the generation problem, and we had Kufuor who took pastors to go and pray for the dam for rain to come. This guy actually invested a lot in the power generation. He put out ESLA. And you know what they did with the ESLA? When they came, they collateralized the ESLA and used part of ESLA for SML. We saw it in the last time we discussed it. So Bahama actually solved the doom, but because of the lies and everything they told, now they are dealing with doom again. Second, the dollar. Bahama took it from 1.2 to 4. Now you've taken it to what? 16. And you're trying to tell me this Mahama guy who was not the economist is not better. Come on. We can sit down and take ourselves and laugh. But at the end of the day, the math is the math. 2 is greater than 1. And if 2 is greater than 1, you can never tell me 2 is equal to 1. They are not equal. At least when you look at the last 8 years of Mahama and the last 8 years of this Akufo-Addo government. And that's what I'm saying. If we have to grow as a country, the change is necessary. If Mahama comes and messes up and we can attribute the failure to their actions and inaction, we should put them out. We have to keep reiterating until we get to a good solution. And that's what we have to do. But if you come and tell me, these guys are the same, then it means that you are trying to tell me we shouldn't look at the facts.
I'm trying to tell you to look for third person.
No, okay, all right. So
I'm saying look for somebody else.
Okay, all right. So Oreku,
the two. That's all.
All right, okay. So let me bring Zita in here to be the tiebreaker. But I don't think I mean Oreku is not being realistic because look, the idea of a third force, given the nature of our political system, is highly unlikely, right? So in the event of what we have and the realities of Ghana's political space, what do we have to do? Yes, so Zita, you can take it
exactly away. And that is for me the disposition of the MPP sympathizers and their ability to tread on delusional analysis. MPP NDC is what we got, and if we do comparative, the whole concept of the third force, it is idealistic at best. It would never happen. And for Oreku to say that Napo is arrogant in terms of policy, it is surprising. It is not policy. It is the way he speaks to people and his demeanor. And I say this whole issue is a concept of Ashantis and their speaking group feeling like they're better than any other group in Ghana. That is their disposition. And so he has that, and that is why he said, he will go on a protest if a budget was allocated.
I mean, Zita, I would like us to just keep it with respect to the individual that we're talking about, right? Yes, and not to generalize it in a way that, because there's sometimes that's a very sensitive way of putting it. That
it is, but Agana, if we're going to be honest with ourselves and look at the way ethnicity plays a role in our politics. I'm a sociologist and I'm not sociologist.
Yes, just 1 minute. I understand that politicians have exploited it. You understand, and there are people who also have those sentiments. But I would say we should be very mindful in our conversations and the tendency to generalize. But we know that politicians have exploited the ethnic differences and blown them out of proportion for political gain. Right? I agree with that aspect.
It's not the politician. You should be, and you see, but you should be. That's why I always say that some of us are on the street of social media, and that is where the grassroots happen. You should see the position of people when Pastor Junasari talked about Nogopo. You should see the sentiment. There is this whole thing, and I always say it. I pay attention when I'm on social media, and I read carefully, and it is a just group of people who feel like, Ghana belongs to us to a certain extent, that we are the better group. That is the fact. If we don't want to talk about that, then we are not really to really delve into the politics of Ghana. That is part of the reasons why he was even nominated, to give that balance. And so if Oreku is saying that it has to do with policy, it's not just policy, it's just a disposition. And like I said, I may have that disposition. You may call me arrogant, but I'm saying, own it. because it's just his disposition and the way he responds to question. It has nothing to do with his policy directives of, oh, I'm not going to go with this policy, I'm going to go with that. I've not, it's not about policy, and that Mahama indicated arrogance in terms of policy. I mean, my point is the whole using going against a certain policy directive as a measure of arrogance. For me, that analysis Boreku doesn't work. Ghana will never have a third force, not in my lifetime, at least. I'm above 35, and if life expectancy is 73 generally, even though women tend to live longer than men, I don't think that the next 30 something years I will see the goalpost shift in Ghana's politics in terms of a third force. NDC is MP, and MPP is what we got. And if we are going to be honest, the MPP has failed woefully. So let us stop the delusional and idealistic politics saying let's vote for a third force. A third force have been attempted multiple times. It won't happen. Ghana is separated into two, MPP, NDC, and at the heart of those two is more of strong ethnicity. And it's more like some ethnic groups going against each other. That is the reality of our politics. And the earlier we talk about it, the better. NDC and MPP are not going anywhere. Let's get our heads out of the cloud and deal with the reality and look at the proven record and look at the numbers, look at the data, look at policy failure and the facts on the ground.
Okay.
So,
all right.
I have a question though.
Yes.
Josita, okay. I don't understand. So you're saying that Napo's nomination is linked to what? Ethnicity and superiority?
No. I'm not saying his nomination is linked to ethnic superiority. I'm saying that it ties into our politics of ethnicity and superiority, where when it comes to the MPP, of course, a certain group are seen as superior, so they should be given. And if we're going to be honest, that is part of the reason why he was chosen, to appease that sector. Because if you, Oreku, you are on the ground and you watch the interview going around when Bawumia was chosen, I'm not sure if you were listening to your own MPP delegates and the things they were mentioning. They were talking about ethnicity. Oh, he's from the north, that and that. They were. Why was Kennedy Japan get some level of razzmatazz and got some level of crowd? Because of what he represented, because they felt that choosing Bawumia have shifted that MPP belonged to the Akan speaking group, specifically the Ashanti. And so let us be honest here. I'm not saying that because he is superior. I'm saying that it ties in. My superiority comment was more of the broader sentiment in Ghana, where particular ethnic groups feel more Ghanaian than other ethnic groups.
All right. Okay. I mean, yeah. So let's move on. I mean, ethnicity is still an issue in Ghana, but I think over the years we've made some gains, and we will continue to improve. The reality is that ethnic calculations go into the decision as to who becomes, a running mate. Once the flag bearer has been chosen, the expectation is that you balance it. As to whether that has actually yielded any electoral gains for any political party, I don't know if there's any deep analysis that has really proven that. Because we've seen instances where there have been, for instance, candidates the whole ticket from one part of the country without seeking to balance it out in that sense. Right. And the fact of the matter is, in our politics, we have various interests, right? So, for instance, the NDC, since Rawlings hasn't had a presidential candidate from the Volta region, but you have heavyweights of the party that are from the Volta region that have interest in the party who would benefit significantly if the party wins. And so having somebody at the top of the ticket from their ethnicity almost doesn't really make a difference. You understand? So sometimes, but I agree that these calculations go in, but as to their effectiveness, I cannot tell. But let's move on to the issue of the Chief Justice and the letter that she wrote to the president asking that a certain number of judges be added to the court. The NDC has made a big deal out of this, but I'll read the letter. It says, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, President of the Republic of Ghana, Jubilee House, Accra. That's who it's addressed to. Your Excellency, proposal for appointment of 5 judges to the Supreme Court are right to respectfully request that the following judges be appointed to the Supreme Court of Ghana. Her Ladyship, Justice Angela Mensah Homia, J.A., His Lordship, Justice Eric Che Barfour, His Lordship, Justice Edward Amwako Asante, Her Ladyship, Justice Pamela Cranton, Her Ladyship, Justice Efiasari Botry. So Justice Asante's term of office at the ECOWAS court ended on 31st July 2022. He was requested to remain at post on account of the withdrawal of Mali, Guinea, and Burkina Faso from the community. His current tenure is expected to end in 2026 or earlier, when he is expected to return to Ghana's judiciary. I don't know the relevance of that information to the person's appointment to the court, but this is the letter that the Chief Justice sent to the president. Now, is this problematic? Because my understanding is that the justices of the Supreme Court are nominated by the president with advice from I think the Judicial Council and Council of State. I don't may have to look at the full detail of that requirement, but most of the time the initial appointment comes from the president, and then it goes through a certain procedure for them to eventually be confirmed as justices of the Supreme Court. But in this particular instance, it is instigated by the Chief Justice. And I want us to look at the appropriateness of such a request, both in terms of its legality and otherwise, or in the broader context of democracy. So, well, I'll go to Oreku first. I mean, you're a political scientist, and I believe, you might offer some guidance in talking about
trying to set me up for Zita need to always respond. It's okay. There's a perceived bias. But I'll take it. I'll take it.
That's all. That's all.
So when I first heard it when you sent to me, and this morning, and I looked at it, I started to do a little bit of check around it. And because I've never heard something like that, I always know that it is the president that appoints members to the Supreme Court. The president can appoint whoever they want to appoint, so long as the person meet the minimum requirement. And that is why Uni Kolendi was recently appointed, and he had never served on the bench anywhere. He was in private practice. Harita Mensah Bonzo was recently appointed. They were all in their own private practice, or Harita was a professor, a great one indeed. So I've never heard of something like that. So I decided to check that is really within the requirement for the Chief Justice to make such recommendation. And if those recommendations come in, how should the president respond to it? I really didn't find anything. I just found the NDC responding to the illegality of it, which I don't know whether it's illegal or not. But for me, if you broaden the conversation of the conversation around whether it's a conflict of interest or not.
You're a family man, we understand. Continue.
I'm hiding in the basement trying to run away from them, but I've lost my train of thought. So the issue of whether it undermines the checks and balances or it undermines the independence of the judiciary is an issue we can talk about.
Okay.
I don't know if the president has acted on. I don't think the president will act on that. It's just a suggestion coming from the Chief Justice, and that suggestion, when it is taken, it becomes the president's appointment. So technically, nothing has been violated for me. So it's a Chief Justice writing a letter to the president and saying, "Hey, I want you to appoint these guys to the Supreme Court." If the president takes it, then becomes the president appointing as is mandated by law. But for me, the issue of whether it compromises the independence of the judiciary is neither here nor there, because it's a president who is always appointing out of his own imagination. And that's always been that since 1992. And the perceived biases are always there. Normally, the presidents appoint people they know, people they have competence in, the people that they believe, and upon advice of ABCD based on what has been provided.
Okay.
We've also seen that some of these Supreme Court judges have gone on to exhibit themselves independently, and some of them really have gone on to do their work the way it's expected them to do, even at times against the president that appointed them. And it is shown from 1992 till now. We've seen that. We've also seen some of them that have shown clear biases to the president that supported them. And I think Ramona Tukuba has done research to that, where you see that some of the Supreme Court judges vote based on who appointed them.
Okay, so you hold it there, and let me come look. You said when it comes to its impact on the integrity of the court and checks and balances, it's neither here nor there. And then you bring up the president appointing Supreme Court justices as sort of saying that, well, the president appoints them. And so if this whole idea of separation of powers and independence is equally somehow compromised if the president appoints, right? But look at it this way. Let's not forget the political aspect, that the court is also an instrument of policy making. Say that if a political party elected by the people wants to spearhead a certain policy, they tend to select certain judges who share certain ideologies with them to the court. Maybe not in the case of Ghana. We probably are not that sophisticated, but in the Western world, we see these things happen. And the fact that the president selects or elects a Supreme Court judge is essentially to facilitate their politics, not their personal interest, but the type of politics that they represent. And once they make it to the bench, these people are no longer amenable to the desires of the president. They are removed from any attachment to the president once they have been nominated. So that independence comes into effect once they are selected, right? But here is the case. You have the Chief Justice actually nominating people to sit on the bench. She herself is on the bench. I mean, where is the independence going to come from? That, Oreku, you select me to join you on the bench. Don't I owe you certain loyalties?
So, and that's what I'm saying. So that is what we have now. Currently, the president appoints. And by president appointing, that compromise has always been there. Where,
but my question about the president's appointment, wait a second, is the fact that once the person gets on the bench, they are free from the president, right? But here is the case. A chief justice is actually, if you like, in practice, is the one doing the appointment because she is the one that sends the name. Now, legally, it's going to appear as though the president is the one appointing because he takes the list and then he decides that, okay, I am nominating these individuals to come on the bench, right? So at that point, the appearance of the appointment is going to be as though the president is the one. But here's the case. We have a chief justice interfering in that process by giving names out, and which I say is likely to compromise the independence of the individuals that she recommends.
You know what I want? You know what I want to see?
Yeah.
I want to see a situation whereby you have an independent commission or body or whatever appointing people to appointing judges to the Supreme Court, devoid of any interference. Or we can have a system within the judicial hierarchy whereby people will go and rise up to the Supreme Court based on certain mechanisms and based on certain ceiling. But so long as the Constitution allows the politicians to appoint, like it's happening in the US and the rest, then these issues will happen if we don't manage it well. So currently, presidents in Ghana appoint, and we don't have any ceiling. So Akufo-Addo, I think, has appointed so many people so far. We don't have any ceiling. And they keep appointing and appointing and appointing. And we don't know when it will end. So that is a policy issue we have to deal with.
Yeah, we'll come to the numbers, right? But I just wanted us to look at it from what the court is supposed to represent in the broader context of democracy. That what are we seeking to achieve with the judiciary? And so the mechanisms of selecting members of the judiciary, how is it connected to the overall objective or goals of the democratic system of government that we have put in place? Say that the appointment by a president and the appointment by a chief justice, how does that impact the goal that we seek to achieve with the courts in a democratic system, right? And I say, because when you come up with the issue of an independent body selecting, but let's not ignore the fact that there's essentially some expectation of politics, not in a very bad way, but policy-wise, right, in the courts. Say that if you have a neutral body selecting the Supreme Court, then if the expected impact of political policy on the court would be lost. Because in the US, for instance, a conservative comes in and they name their judges, and it's on the basis of conservative policy. Are we saying that that dimension is not important? Do we just want a perfectly neutral court in that sense? Like sort of a veil of ignorance sort of situation?
No, then in our case, it's going to be NDC coming naming their judges, NPP coming naming their judges. Basically, that's how it is. Like if we using the US system, that's how it's going to be.
Yes, not in a blanket way, but we'll come to the issue of the cap, where that has to be that's necessary, right? Whether we want to put it in the constitution or not, that's another question. But there has to be a certain limit to the number of courted judges at any given time. But are we going to completely ignore the policy aspect of it? Whereby,
So I'm gonna flip it this way. See the judiciary as an organization. And here we are not talking about the chief justice elected, we're talking broadly. See the judiciary as an organization, see the Supreme Court judge as a hiring manager, who, if the constitution allows, set up a system, set up a vetting system, hire Supreme Court judges, compare that to a president out of his own desires, appointing. Which one has more tendency to erode the benefits of democracy? Which one has more tendency to breach checks and balance? Which one has more tendency to destroy or to lead to conflict of interest? Which one has more tendency?
Okay. I mean, yeah, you make a very good point. But so I guess, this requires a broader conversation about how we can work this out. But I also am thinking about the political aspect of the court, and that it is also an instrument to influence policy. Say that at any given time, an elected government would not directly interfere, but would use the court as a means of influencing policy in the long run. But let's save it here. But again, I think we have to clearly define. I guess, we are, even in our conversation here, it's an impasse, right? So we probably have to clearly delineate how we want to select our justices of the Supreme Court. And in doing so, we have to also pay attention to our broader goals in the democratic dispensation, what we want to achieve with the Supreme Court. That would inform how we select the judges, right? But let's not ignore the current political space. Zita, what is your take on this letter, and especially in the context of the current public perception of the court? Do you think this does anything to improve the integrity or the public perception of the court?
Yeah, I am not into law, so I'll keep my submission simple. I was listening to political activist and physician, Dr. Arthur Kennedy, and his arguments were persuasive to me. It's all about timing. And he also re-echoed what you're saying, that the timing in terms of the integrity and the credibility of the Supreme Court is under scrutiny. And so in as much as the request is based on trying to make the system more efficient, he believes that they are able to work around it where they don't need more appointments. They are able to work around it by, subjecting certain cases to a lower court and not dealing with certain things, because it's about being overburdened with too many cases and all that. And so timing is wrong, and the issue of the political implications of such a letter, again, is not the best, and these are some of the concerns that were raised. 6 months to election, people believe that this particular request is politically motivated. The timing is not the best, and there are better ways to deal with, efficiency in the system than appointing 5 new judges to the Supreme Court. So I will leave it at that. We will be following the case, and the legal minds will be chiming in for some of us to learn about, what is going on. But that is virtually my take on it. The timing is wrong. The credibility and integrity of the Supreme Court is under scrutiny. And also 6 months to elections, it's not the best. And the political implications of such an appointment and how it will lean towards creating a legal shield for the MPP, because the argument of the NTC is that they are definitely going to lose, and so they are creating some form of a legal shield so they are not held accountable. So those are my thoughts on it, and I'll be keen to and see what or hear what Ni has to say on this issue. As for Oreku, I know where, but Oreku for once he does make an excellent contribution though. Honestly, independent body to regulate. For once, we don't agree, but for once, I agree with
For
Oreku.
once, I make an excellent contribution. Wow.
Oh yes, yes. You do
Wow.
question about that independent. It's
That is not a compliment, though. That is. I don't think that is.
Well. You can choose to take it as a compliment or not. But I saw Ni nodding, and I believe there's credibility in your suggestion.
All right. Okay. So Ni, let's hear you on this.
I guess what Zita's trying to say is we all agree with your point that there needs to be, some level of independence, and I agree with your suggestion that we need. I don't know whether it's an amendment or a new constitution, but there are a lot of things that need to be made right, and selecting of the judges is one. I also feel appointment of the EC is also one thing. A new constitution need to correct or make right, because right now the president select the EC. It's not right, judges, so that we can do better. I actually wanted to read more about how the Kenyans select their judges, because the way the court system handled this their routes, I really liked it. It seemed that they are a little bit more independent than we have in Ghana. So, but for me, aside the constitution and the procedural part of all this argument, the other thing that concerns me is do we need the extra 5, right? Do we need it? Because I don't think, if you look at the comparison, I know US has 9, they have other state judges, but do we need 20 judges as a small country? Do we need it? So I mean, I'm not a lawyer. I don't want to talk too much about that, but it doesn't make sense to me. And the other part of it is the expenses on part of government, right? Because he's selecting these judges, I'm sure they are entitled to some benefits, right? You're increasing that by 5 more judges. So I don't know why he's doing it. And for me, it gets me thinking, what's this guy planning, and that's what worries me. But at the end of the day, I hope it doesn't go through, because it doesn't make sense to me. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Okay. So you brought up the numbers, and yes, the U.S. has 9. In fact, the U.S. Supreme Court is not capped. It's not stated in the Constitution that they should have 9 judges. But it'll be difficult for anybody to increase the number just because of the structure of the government and the layers of checks that are going to be involved in trying to move away the current norm of selecting 9 people on the bench. And also, when you bring up the US, people say that the US has state judges, right? They have state Supreme Courts. So there are lower courts at the state level and then at the federal level. And so the argument is that if you put all that together, the number comes up to more than 9. Now, and I had some analysis of where people actually decided to combine all the state Supreme Court judges, including the federal judge, and then say that effectively, these are the number of judges. But I think the way we have to look at it is to look at it from, for instance, if you want to look at it on the state basis, then take a state like California. the population of California is almost like the state, like Ghana, pretty much. And so if you want to analyze it from that perspective, take the state of California, the number of Supreme Court judges that are there. I don't know how many cases from California actually make it to the U.S. Supreme Court, right? If you want to analyze it that way. So, that balance is not, I mean, making that sort of comparative analysis, in my opinion, is not entirely a valid one. But they also mention that the Ghana courts take on a lot of cases, that the jurisdiction of the U.S. Supreme Court is quite different from the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court of Ghana, because Ghanaian courts take more cases, whereas in the U.S., their cases are clearly defined, and there are a lot of cases that don't make it to the Supreme Court. So what it clearly means is that the Supreme Court of Ghana has, or if you like, the judicial system of Ghana needs to be properly restructured. Because I don't think that, I mean, I listened to Newsfile, and Samson was mentioning outrageous numbers, that a number of cases that the Supreme Court of Ghana has to hear in a year, and that they hear up to 800 cases in a year. That's ridiculous. So for me, we really have to sit back and go back to the basic principles of, this whole system, and try to restructure the courts in a way that it will make sense, or the workload of the Supreme Court will be manageable. And so that was the argument that some people were using to say that we need to increase the number, because currently I think they're about 16, and the nomination was supposed to make them 20. So the justification for adding more judges was that they hear a lot of cases, and so we needed more judges. But does the Supreme Court have to hear all these cases that come to them? Do we have to expand the lower courts in a way that they can speed up some of these cases, and then perhaps just prevent certain cases from making it to the Supreme Court if they don't meet certain requirements? So I think these are some of the things that we really have to examine in our judiciary, and just clearly define what the Supreme Court is meant for. And that way, we can say, okay, these are the number of judges that we expect to sit on cases. Okay. So in fact, I want us to keep the show under an hour. And so I feel like we wanted to talk about the free SHS thing, the decision or the proposal to cancel BECE. And I think, it's a topic that Oreku is very interested in. So I would like us to just delve into it a little bit, because you have, knowing you've always proposed that the BECE should be abolished. And so it seems like this is almost like you talking in terms of this policy. So I think we haven't seen the actual bill that has gone to Parliament, and so we cannot speak about it in details. But just initial thoughts regarding potentially scrapping the BECE and just making it 6 years of secondary education, and is the timing right, and do we have to do it progressively? So, well, I'll go to Zita first, and then I'll come to Oreku, since you protested the last time I called you first.
I'm not sure why Oreku will be interested. I am the one whose work has extensively, bothered on education, but I've heard him make such an argument before. It was a political gimmick. But back to the issue, I would say that for me, my concern, and I did send you a video, is this an issue of heavy finance? Because the current government cannot pay for the BECE. So why is this new movement, this whole bill and this law trying to be passed? Do you understand? Because currently there is impending crisis that they can't write the BECE because the government owes money and they are not able to print and have, the whole exam go on. So in as much as it is good, I did some quick historical trajectory, and it is in 1987. I think I was about 1 year old. I was a baby then. 1987, when Rawlings was in, military power, that things changed from the the common entrance thing to decoupling of the secondary school to have it at the junior level and the senior high level. For me, the key thing is now about going back to the past. In as much as it sounds good, my key issue is funding. How is this going to be funded? Because with the current system, you cannot fund it. What is the future of the free SHS policy that the MPP has touted is their baby and they're using to campaign? What is going to be the future of the free SHS policy? Because right now they are struggling. The children are not being fed correctly. So if you are now going to consume JSS to add to make it one, what is going to be the future of the free SHS policy? And perhaps Oreku can touch on that. And for me, the final sentiment is, how is this relevant to Ghana's economic needs? We can't be going back, oh, we want to scrap based on this and that. Again, I believe that the examination might not be relevant and we need to find other ways of measuring students' abilities. So yes, we can take down the BEC. It's not a measure of intelligence. The way the Ghana education system is structured, sometimes it deflates intelligent students and it makes them feel like they're not intelligent enough just because of the harsh grading scheme. But if we want to introduce a system, my thing is not about going back to the past and saying, oh, we've done this in the past, let's go with the previous system. How is the new law going to translate into creating or producing a group of students that can solve or contribute to Ghana's economic needs? Once education is not connected to our economic needs, we are going to have the same problem we are having. So funding, future of the free SHS policy, and how this will respond to Ghana's economic needs.
Okay. All right. So Oreku, can you come in here and then quickly for us?
Make Ni go. I'm confirmed.
Okay, all right. Okay, Ni, yeah, you go ahead and then yes.
Yeah, actually, for this topic, I see no sense in it, right? But I also want to learn. Maybe there's not a lot of information around, but what I saw, I'm like, okay, why do we need to make the JHS put junior high school and senior high school together? I read it, I didn't get it. I'm like, okay, why are we doing this? And I saw in the article that those schools doing it can continue. I'm like, the system we have is actually very good. You have students after JHS, they can travel to every part of the country, and at that time they're a little bit mature, so they can be able to handle living on their own. So I can't see it, but I mean, I can be surprised. So I don't want to be too hard on it. And since you said Oreku is maybe an expert on this, I also want to learn from him as well.
Okay.
and Ghana, quickly, infrastructure. I think Ni has touched on that. You see, Ghana infrastructure. So the key issues: do we have the infrastructure to support this new law, funding, and how it connects to our economic needs?
Okay. All right. Well, Reku, are you ready?
So I was happy when I read that they're going to abolish the BEC. It really has no place in our educational system, and I've made it over and over. Like 15 years ago, when I was with you in St. Catherine somewhere, we're making that argument. So it's not today. The fact is, the BEC has no place within any of our educational system. BEC students are normally 12 years, 13 years, or 15 years old. Then we use that BEC to determine the destiny of those students. Some of them, it used to be that 30% of them would drop out, and they haven't even reached the age of work. So we don't have anywhere to take them. High school should be a logical extension of grade 9. BEC is grade 9. That is JSS 3. And at grade 9, we are telling these students that they failed in BEC or they didn't do well. Can you guys stop?
No, keep going. That's fine. Yeah, we understand.
So, so basically, I don't know where Dora is. My goodness.
Yeah.
So basically, what the logic behind this whole cancellation of BEC is to make basic education up to grade 12, like we have in other parts of the world, so that every child will not have to pause and decide whether to go to high school or not. And that
No, keep going. Let's go.
Yeah.
Oracle, at least it makes you more likable. You're a family man. It makes you more likable. So let your kids make noise in the background.
I've come to hide in the basement, lock myself, but they were able to still open the door. I don't know why.
It's called the joy of parenting.
But basically, that's my views on that. We can talk about it later.
Okay, all right. Well, as we said earlier on, I mean the topic, I mean the issue is still not very clear as to where the government wants to go with this. But when we get more information, it can become a major topic for us. I mean, there's a lot of people on here who are passionate about education, and I think we need to talk about it a lot more. But I think we'll have to draw the curtains here.
Me, if you may know, I was listening to I've forgotten what his title is, but he focuses on Africa's education. He said that one of the benefits of the old system was that if they continued and transitioned to high school, the students had time to specialize. They had time to gain more confidence in some of the disciplines, which is good. But it's an issue of infrastructure. Currently, every school system is structured to, JSS level. So how is the transition going to be made? But again, I don't think they're scrapping the BEC. I think they just have to, I believe in some form of examination. It might not be the current system of, where you are writing all the subjects, but maybe the 3 core subjects and whatever the student chooses to write, maybe 2 other electives that based on the student's own interest, just allow them transition, because secondary school, we have to position students differently based on their abilities, right? So that is where I'm hoping the discussion goes to. But I agree that the current system sometimes deflates people, but we don't have the infrastructure. So if we're not going to have the regular BC, we need to have a different form of examination that allows students, to measure general competencies, whatever, math, English, science, general competencies, and then students can opt to write 2 other electives, and then they can transition. And it's not the sharp certificate, like, this is your A1, A2, and all that, and that. So just to touch on what you were asking, they said that it allowed the teachers time to teach well, and the students, building competencies in some of these courses that they chose at secondary school level.
All right, guys. I think we have to draw the curtains here. And Oregu, your presence today has added color to our show. We hope you will join us.
I want to give a political balance.
Yeah.
He is fighting me.
Oregu, I'm not fighting you. I'm fighting your words, not you. But yeah, it was nice meeting you, bro.
Yeah. So hopefully, you will join us regularly, and then
Zita, a long time.
Yeah. So anyways, so thanks a lot, Zita and Nee. Yeah, you guys are regular on the show, and without you, it's not going to be possible. And then we thank our viewers. We thank Benjamin Wayo for blasting us on his platform, very popular platform. And then I entreat our viewers to join us again next week, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Ghana time. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you again next week. All right.
Yeah, Zita, see you.
All right, guys.
You let it yum, 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 yum. Yum, 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 yum.